Can a human give birth to a rabbit? Common sense dictates no, but in the 18th century, one ambitious mother definitely tried to scam the British crown into a ridiculous payday by demonstrating otherwise. Yeah, it's gonna get weird. But let's start with the normal stuff. In 1726, Mary Toft was not a name of note. She lived in England with her husband, their three kids, and at the time she was pregnant with their fourth. All of them were barely scraping by. Now, the story goes something like this. One day, while tending to her yard, a rabbit crossed Mary's path. Seeing both a free and scrumptious dinner in front of her, she proceeded to chase it. But don't worry, animal lovers, our little bunny did get away. According to first-hand accounts and Mary herself, after this incident, she became obsessed, craving rabbit every which way, from rabbit pot pie to rabbit stew to blanched rabbit meat. Pregnancy cravings, am I right? Given their meager household income, Mary knew this was a hunger that wasn't going to be satiated anytime soon, which probably fueled her obsession. Fast forward 4 months after what I like to call Rabbitgate, Mary seems to go into premature labor. With OB John Howard attending, she wouldn't miscarry a human child, however, but dead animals. Pieces of pig, cat head and paw, and then come the infamous rabbit parts. Howard bragged to colleagues that he had delivered over 10 dead rabbits from Mary, albeit in pieces, and then proceeded to jar and pickle and display these parts because, of course, he did. Predictably, word got around all the way back to King George I, who sent a royal anatomist to investigate. The anatomist had apparently impeccable timing and walked in the door right as Mary was giving birth to her 15th rabbit. He reported seeing her abdomen quiver and tremble and quake, and he assumed that this is why the animals were coming out in pieces, that her body was basically crushing them. Why that didn't also happen to her human children, I'm not sure. I want to note here that Mary didn't seem emotionally stressed, but rather calm, which probably should have been a red flag to those involved at this point. But the anatomist, though, was blown away, and he wanted to study Mary further back at the capital. In fact, he promised her a royal pension if she complied. Can you see the why behind these shenanigans yet? But we're getting ahead of ourselves. At this point, no one knew that this was about to be unveiled as an elaborate scheme. Now for some historical perspective, because who am I if not an educator? In the 18th century, it actually wasn't all that uncommon for European parents to sell or display the corpses of what were called monstrous births at the time. It was a way for them to get an extra payday. So what Mary was doing was not all that novel, but it was unique. However, it is worth mentioning that women at the time were also blamed for those very same monstrous births, as they were seen as a punishment from God for lapses in morality, for things like extramarital affairs or premarital sex. Isn't it strange, though, that men, who so equally contribute to the baby-making process, weren't treated with the same moral scrutiny and suspicion? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is part of how the patriarchy uses sex and reproduction to control women. Coming back to Mary, though, before she could cash in on that sweet, sweet royal pension, local skeptics were on the case, thanks to Enlightenment and the scientific method. These skeptical minds uncovered that Mary had tried to bribe a local porter to smuggle her in rabbit pieces, so this is likely how she was obtaining her other dead animal parts as well. Due to her current destitute nature, it is unlikely that Mary was paying up front for these grisly favors, but more probable that she was making promises of future returns, banking on getting that royal paycheck. Mary did outright deny all of these allegations, but when skeptics made it clear that the next step in their investigation was going to be exploratory surgery, in the 18th century, I remind you, she quickly confessed, but she didn't take any of the blame. She said that her husband, her mother-in-law, and even local acquaintances had pressured her into this elaborate scheme. No one really seemed to believe that part of her story, though, and Mary's name quickly became embroiled in this early scandal, so much so that weirdo history nerds like myself still talk about her this many years later. Mary did go on to have another child. She messed around with the law and was arrested for petty theft, but otherwise faded into the annals of history like most everybody else. And there you have it, the story of Mary Toft, early British pick-me girl who chased clout and money by willingly putting dead animal parts in her down there.